One of the more popular shows we had here on Mastodon Spotlight last year was a show we did with assistant coaches in various sports. By popular demand, we're going to do it again, and we hope to have as much fun this time as we did last time. It's a special edition of Mastodon Spotlight, and it's coming up next.
It is more than a trial by fire. It is a rite of passage. And if you can master your fear, outsmart your enemy, and never yield, even to yourself, you will be changed forever. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Miles. Welcome to this special edition of Mastodon Spotlight. Well, as I said a moment ago, one of our more popular shows last year was a show that we called Roundtable 1, where we had a number of assistant coaches here at the university. They came in and we talked about a number of different topics, and a lot of people liked it, and we're going to do it again this year. And our victim, so to speak, to my immediate right is Joe Pachota. Joe is assistant coach for men's basketball. To Joe's right is Mike Harper, and Mike is Terry Stefankowicz's right-hand man, or maybe Terry is Mike's right-hand man, but Mike works with both the men's and women's soccer teams. To Mike's right is Dave Schmidlin, who is an assistant coach with the men's volleyball team, and that's kind of historic in itself, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And to Dave's right is Chris Paul, who is a member of the women's basketball coaching staff. In fact, we had Chris on just recently. So gentlemen, welcome to what we call Roundtable 2. And I guess at this point, let's talk a little bit about what this year has been like so far in each of your sports. And Joe, we'll start with you.
Well, I think for the most part it's been an experience. You know, we were breaking new grounds, which we knew we were going to. At times we played well, other times we haven't played well. You know, we've had chances to step on the big stage, so to speak, and at the same time to play some games in situations that are extremely winnable. You know, obviously with a couple NAIA schools that we played, also going up to Michigan State and Michigan. So we've got a group of guys that are working hard, understanding what Division I basketball is all about. Not only at the big time level, but at the mid-major level in which we are at. And I think if we keep coming, we keep progressing the way that we know we will, and we find some time to break through, I think we'll be fine. But so far, you know, we're getting there. We're working.
Mike Harper, you have the inenviable task of working with both men's and women's soccer at the same time. Talk about the seasons just recently completed.
It was definitely a learning experience. We had a long year with both programs, as we talked about earlier in one of these shows. But I learned a lot, Terry learned a lot, our kids learned a lot. It was a whole new ball game playing in Division I. We know now what we need to do to prepare for next year, what kind of kids we need to get. The kids that we do have, they now know what they need to do for next year, which is very important when it comes to strength, speed, and just their speed of play. So I think we're definitely going to be prepared for next year. We're not going to have another year like we had last. And I think we do have a good core of kids returning, which will help us carry us into the next year. So we got a positive outlook, and we'll get it done.
Dave, I mentioned a moment ago that you're an historic person here on the staff at IPFW in the sense that you are the first full-time assistant that Arnie has ever had.
Yeah, that's and he doesn't know how to handle that. So maybe end up on the golf course a little more than usual. But no, that's it's been an adjustment for both of us. for me, coming back where I was the head coach at St. Francis last year, and now coming back to be an assistant. And when I was at St. Francis, I learned how to do a lot of the dirty work, which I've never had an opportunity to do here. And coming in with, well, the cupboard wasn't bare, but coming in here with what was considered a really down year for last year for Arnie, really frustrating, and coming in with a fall with our two best players coming down with injuries. It's been a real frustrating time at this point. But it looks like everybody's going to be back in January. And we should, by the end of January, middle of February, we ought to be hitting on all cylinders.
I know we're looking forward to the start of the season here on College 56. We open up with Long Beach State. And that's a ho-hum opponent, as I told Arnie a few weeks ago.
No, Long Beach is pretty tough. That'll be good.
Chris Paul, we had you on recently. You were a member of the women's basketball staff. You came over from St. Francis. Talk about the difference between coaching at an NAIA level school like St. Francis and coming over here at NCAA.
Well, we talked a little bit about it last week, and I think the biggest difference is when we were across town, sometimes we had games against teams that we knew we were going to win as soon as we showed up. We had more talent. We had some teams that just really couldn't get a lot of things done. Whereas over here, there just aren't any bad teams. You know, every team can play. Even though we play teams that may have 6 or 7 losses already, they've still got some pieces. Everybody at the Division I level can play. And that's been the biggest adjustment for us so far.
Dave, you also, you alluded to it, last year you were at St. Francis. In your mind, how much of a difference is there in talent and in perhaps attitude from an NAIA level, or maybe image, maybe that might be a better word, between NAIA and NCAA?
Oh, I think anybody who plays in college, they're going to have the attitude, so to speak, to compete. There's no difference in how hard the kids compete. It's just a matter of athletic ability or at level of play is really the main difference. And the other issue between NAI and, or at least at St. Francis and here, was like the rules you got to play by. Is like everybody says NAI has no rules, but which isn't true. But it's hard to find them.
We didn't have many.
I think they're on a post-it note or something like that.
And coming here and going back to the 4-inch NCAA manual, which I have memorized back and forth and inside out.
What rules you could find? What are some of the rule differences between the two?
Oh, in terms of eligibility, at least initial eligibility, it's much easier at the NAIA level. You only have to meet 2 out of 3 criteria, and they're pretty broad, like a top 50% of your class, and having a 2.0 GPA, or having a 840 or 860 on the SAT. You just have to meet 2 out of those 3. Where in the Division I, it's if you have to have a 2.0 GPA minimum, and I don't even know what the SAT score is to correspond with that 2.0 GPA. It's a sliding scale. The lower your GPA, the higher your SAT score has to be, and vice versa. The higher your GPA, the lower it can be to a certain point. And then in terms of scholarship money, counting against your team and against the individual, and it's a lot different. A lot of issues you don't have to deal with on the other side of this town.
Speaking of scholarships, we talked a little bit last year with men's basketball. We didn't have many at all for men's or women's basketball, and yet now that we're in the final process of becoming a full-fledged Division I member, the scholarship quantity is going up. How is that affecting the recruiting a little bit? And the follow-up question is going to be one that may not be able to be answered. Where's the scholarship money coming from?
Well, I know, from our standpoint, having a trump card of a scholarship is huge. especially like you touched on, we were Division II, we had maybe 5.5, whereas this year we have 11, next year we'll have 13. So if anything, it puts us on an even playing field with the teams that we're playing against. Now, are we going to be able to go out and get, you know, Lavelle Blanchard from Michigan State type players, or, you know, probably not, but we can still go out and get some kids that are going to be pretty competitive. And kids take you a little bit more seriously because, you know, I know Chris has run into this too. There's kids that have egos out there, you know, and they want the scholarship, and they want the Division I scholarship. And, you know, it's nice to have an ego, but it's nice to have some playing skills to go along with that. I mean, you don't want to recruit a kid that, you know, that isn't very good and scholarship them. So it's definitely a plus, a huge plus.
Mike, I know when we had Terry on at the end of the soccer season, he commented about 9.9, I think, scholarships that you have available. Is that correct? Is that per team for both men and women, or?
It varies a little bit. The women are a little bit higher, but a lot of our money, we're going after kids right now who are getting decent grades, real good grades actually, so we can bring them in on academic money as well. This helps our athletic program out as well, and we're getting better quality kids in. So that's kind of our loophole. You know, we have more scholarships now than what we did, but we're bringing in better students. So that's where some of the money's coming from, which helps us out tremendously.
Dave, we had Arnie on. I have him on once a year on our show, and of course he has his own show that'll start in January. And when we got to this issue of scholarships, that's a sore subject with him, because I believe in volleyball, or men's volleyball, you're restricted, and all NCAA members are restricted to 4.5. Any idea where that number came from? And has there been thought or talk at whatever level to try to increase the number of available scholarships for men's volleyball?
I don't, you know, there's no way it's ever going to go up. Not with that gender equity issue ever hanging over everybody's head. And, you know, the majority of the schools that carry men's volleyball are at the Division III level, which don't even have scholarships. So it is a sore subject. And what we, you know, when we went to Division I, what had made it more difficult is that we're competing, even though we were always competing against Ohio State, Penn State, you know, all those big time schools, again, for kids. In Division II, you know, the rules were a little different, and even now that we're still competing against Division II schools, but you know, the difference between our school being a commuter campus and the other ones being residence campuses has made it a little different in that our talent pool that we were able to draw from has shrunk, and now kids who Ohio State could not get that we could get in the past, we're not able to get anymore. Like a Scott Lane, for instance. You know, we were pretty much the only option he had. But now we're going against these high school kids, and you know, we go against a kid who wants to study genetics or something like that, and we're competing against Ohio State for this kid. You know, Ohio State's got a tremendous genetics program. There's no way we're going to compete with that. So, yeah, it does cause some problems, but you know, the international students, they don't care where they go to school. They just want to come to the States, so that makes it easier. The Puerto Ricans still help us level out the playing field a little bit, and so forth and so on. We just got to dig a little deeper and work a little harder.
Let's take it one step further. It's always been a known fact that in men's volleyball, the power has lied on the West Coast. The UCLA, the Long Beach State, the USCs, and others. And now you got BYU and Hawaii. Obviously, they have a tremendous advantage because they're a warm weather climate. But men's volleyball is played indoors. How can we go up and nail some of these guys that would have thought about going out west? How can we entice them to come to the frigid Midwest?
Well, we're not. I mean, most of the, you know, the best players in the West Coast are going to stay on the West Coast. And right now, there's only one California guy that I can think of who's of any major impact who's on the East Coast, and he's a 6'9" middle for Penn State. It's just not going to happen. There's a lifestyle there. There's an attitude there. Just the attitude between West Coast kids and Midwest kids is totally different. Arnie likes to call West Coast kids flaky, but that's not it. But you know, they have so much. Their distractions, the things that they have out there are so much different, and it's not even there's probably no different in worth ethic per se, but how a Midwest coach like Arnie or a Bobby Knight or somebody would perceive a kid on the West Coast is completely different than how a West Coast coach will look at those kids as well. And then the same token, now they're starting to take all the best players out of the Midwest and drawing them out there, which has been beating our head up against the wall. That's driving us nuts. So it's tough.
Chris, with women's basketball, you're going to get a few more scholarships. I believe next year it's mandated that you have 15.
15.
Talk about the recruiting angle for women's basketball.
Well, this is all, relatively new to this coaching staff, coming from St. Francis, where we had Joe talked about, we had 5 over there. And there were times when St. Francis was requiring us to have 20 players, and we had 5 scholarships to do it. So what we had to do is we had to package financial aid, athletic money, and academic money. Now all of a sudden we're given 15 full rides, and it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice that we can go out and talk to kids and not have to worry about, putting this together or what type of. I shouldn't say that. No, I'm not going to say what type of student because we've got problems like that right now. So, but just to be able to know that we've got the athletic money to work with right away is nice. We're able to go after a quality of a player that, when we were at St. Francis, we got pretty good players, but they weren't, they weren't all Division I players. We had a couple that could have played Division I, the rest weren't. And now all of a sudden we're at a level where we can go out and find that good mid-major player and go after him with the full ride. And it's something that we didn't have the luxury over there, and all of a sudden it's pretty nice. We were able to sign 4 early in the early signing period, 4 very quality players. We'll go and try to get a couple more next signing period, and hopefully we'll just keep increasing the talent level.
You mentioned earlier there was an early signing period, and then in basketball, I think the next signing period is in February. Am I correct?
No, ours is until April.
In April? Okay, so we're done until after the season's over and the school year is almost over. How is that different from when you were at St. Francis? Did you have different times that you could recruit, or is it the same?
Well, that's pretty much what Dave and I were just saying. We didn't have any rules, recruiting-wise.
Okay. So
and that's one of the reasons why we were very successful over there, is because we were recruiting 365 days a year. We were at every high school game, we were at practices, we were making phone calls all the time, and now all of a sudden, we've got all these silly rules that we've got to follow, and we've got to try to stay on top of that. So that's the major difference that we've seen coming from across town.
Time for a break, and when we continue, we're going to get into this recruiting area a little bit more deeply, and I'm going to be asking the coaches, what type of player are they actually looking for? Such as, are we going for a talent player? Are we looking at the grade point average? But we'll get into that and a few other issues as well when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
This is me, and my mom and dad, and my big brother Alex, and Jack. This is the day I learned that sandals got their name from sand, and that the ocean is bigger than all of us. This is the day we all got to forget I was sick. This was my wish.
According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, it kills over 1,500 people every year and injures 71,000 more. Inadequate sleep has been linked to health and safety risks, even premature death. But today, new treatments are helping millions get the sleep they need. So talk to your doctor or take our free risk assessment on the web at sleepfoundation.org. Sleep deprivation. It's real, it's dangerous, and it's more treatable than ever.
welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. It's a special edition of the show, and we're pleased to have with us some of the assistant coaches on campus. Again, reintroducing our gathering today. To my right is Joe Pachota with the men's basketball team. Mike Harper from men's and women's soccer is to Joe's right. Dave Schmidlin from men's volleyball is to Mike's right. And Chris Paul from women's basketball rounds out our panel here today. We were in the area of recruiting before we went to break. And I know off camera we were just talking about a couple of points. And I want to take that a step further. With Chris and Dave working at the NAI level, you mentioned that there are no rules basically. Or if they are, like you say, at the needle in the haystack trying to find them. Expand, if you can, on the difficulty, now that you're at an NCAA institution, that your hands are tied. And how do you work around it? You mentioned about there are certain times where you can make visits and certain times you can make calls where you had free reign across town. How do you adapt to the different situations?
For me, it's just coming back. I was here since '92, so I already had those rules, so it really hasn't been a problem. It actually was a bigger problem for me going from here to St. Francis and going, there's got to be a rule against this. And they're like, no rule. I'm like, you got to be kidding. So, and for me, it's really been no problem. I'm sure with women's basketball, it's been totally different.
Well, we're just trying to, like you said, we're trying to adapt. We're so used to being able to make phone calls and going to see kids whenever we wanted to, that now we can't do that. And now Doug makes fun of us because it got to a point early on where we were paranoid to do anything once we came over here. Because once you read that book and you take that test, it almost feels like you can't do anything. It almost feels like you can't talk to a kid here, or you can't say this, or you can't do that. And all of a sudden you're trying to figure out what can we do. So it's an adjustment period. I think we've got it, we're a little more comfortable with it now. The individual who handles that for us is Kurt Patterson. He handles whenever there's a player or we need to get something sent out to, or they need to get in the system, he handles all that. And he tells us, okay, Chris, you need to go see this girl. Here's directions. Go do it. So he's handling it for us that way, and we're just keeping track of all our days that we're allowed out and the times to call and logging everything and going from there.
Let's shift gears a little bit. You are all assistant coaches, but you all are instrumental in some of the decisions that the head coach makes. Briefly, talk about the relationship you have with your boss, so to speak, Joe with Doug, or Mike with Terry, or Dave with Arnie, or Chris, you with Bruce. Talk about the relationship and how it evolves and how the different responsibilities are administered by them to you. Mike, start with you and Terry.
Terry and I, we've had a long relationship now ever since, actually I think I was here, it was my sophomore year. He had just come back to start coaching, so I played for him as a player, got to know him real well, and he's pretty much been a father figure for me since I've been here at IPFW, and he brought me aboard, and we've had just an outstanding relationship. We work well together. He's the old guy, I'm the young guy, so we have two different outlooks on things, and the kids feel more comfortable going to him with certain things and sometimes to me, so it works out to their benefit as well. And as far as him administrating stuff, we kind of just really both tackle things at the same time. He's very good at recruiting. He's been great at that. I got into recruiting a little bit this year and ran into some difficulties. I've been working on scheduling. He hates doing some of that stuff, so I'd take that over. So really, I mean, we've never had problems except on the racquetball court. So,
I got to go back. You had the unique situation because both men's and women's soccer are played simultaneously, and there were some occasions this year where the two of you had to split up. One go with one team, one go with the other. For example, right at the beginning, I think you went out to California for the season opener with Cal Irvine, where he went to Kentucky.
Yeah.
Talk about, and especially in your case, having to work with two teams, the decision who goes with who, and how did that come about?
Basically, we flipped a coin. I mean, that's what it comes down to. We just kind of flip-flopped, so one just wasn't with the men or with the women. We had to switch it up a little bit. And after we've been with a team a certain amount of time, they know what they're doing. All we're there for is to run subs. I mean, in soccer, you really can't get out there and point people in directions. There's 90 minutes of decisions that these kids have to make, and we can help by subbing and maybe talk to them at halftime, but it's their game. So we really just, you know, are there to get the players in, you know, watch them on the road and stuff like that. So once they know what they're doing, it really doesn't matter which coach is there, which I think is a big plus.
Joe, talk about your relationship with Doug.
I think ours is really good, not only personally but professionally. You know, I've known him for a long time. This is my opportunity to work for him for a third straight year. Gives me a lot of responsibility. I think much more responsibility than other coaches would give their assistants, and I value that because, you know, he's done a lot to prepare me, to put me in a situation to become a head coach. And I think that's the sign of a good head coach, is when they prepare assistants to, you know, slide over one chair, if you will, and put themselves in a position to make decisions instead of suggestions. As far as the X's and O's in recruiting, I think we're in the same sentence, not to mention, you know, on the same page. Gives me a lot of bench decisions, a lot of you know, opportunities to make decisions, because, you know, like I said, we are, you know, we're very similar in the way we want things done and when we want them done, and yeah, it works out well. I think we have a really, really good working relationship. And then you add Freddie into the mix with what he's brought. He does a tremendous job as well. You know, and Dave brought up as far as doing all the things, you know, the dirty work and the things behind the scene. And that's, I mean, that's what all of us do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what all of us do. I mean, their jobs are to be in front of the cameras, to be answering questions, and, you know, that reporters may ask or may not ask, and you know, and I enjoy that right now. You know, I know my time will come where I get that opportunity, but right now, there's areas where I need to get better and prepare myself as a coach, and Doug does a great job of helping me do that.
Dave, you said you've been here since '92, with the exception of last year. But last year you had the chance to make all the final decisions. How much difficult, I think you briefly alluded to it at the start of the program, now you're back here as an assistant. You don't have to make that final say, but how much are you tempted in your talks with Arnie to say, well, let's do it this way, period?
Well, in the past, since I wasn't, even though I was here for, you know, since '92, I wasn't around that much when he had to make those decisions. And even though we spoke about them and he would talk about it with the other coaches, now this year is totally different. He's always bouncing things off of me. And, you know, he just came back from Italy saying, you know, I thought about that a lot again, and, you know, that I'm in tune to some things that he's not in tune to, and vice versa. So he's really, and that, which is, I think, has been difficult for him, in that he has to learn how to ask opinions again, whereas, you know, it's always been a dictatorship, so to speak. And I'm glad he's done that. It would be very difficult for me to come back here and not have at least a say in something, even though he might not take that advice or whatever. And, you know, someone had to come back and show him how to turn the computer on and stuff like that.
I think that's
He's going to love you for this.
I think that's one thing that every head coach wants, is an assistant who, you know, is not a yes man, you know, because nobody benefits in situations like that. I mean, when you have, it's great as an assistant, because if you have a head coach that says, well, what do you think? What do you think here? You know, what do you like about this? What don't you like about this? And they might just, you know, pseudo throw that out there just to, you know, create conversation or whatever. But, you know, we're in the department of, you know, making suggestions, and at times, you know, we will make, you know, administrative decisions. But it's a working relationship, and it's something where I know at times with Doug, you know, I picked and choose my battles to, you know, let's think about this, and he's like, oh, I'll do this and this, and I know you guys probably have as well, and there's times you gotta let it go, you know, but then there's other times where it's like, Coach, you know, I know this is gonna work, you know, it'll happen, and then when it does, man, you feel great, because you're like, man, you know, it worked. But if it doesn't, that tie becomes a little bit tighter around the neck.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of picking and choosing, in the game Monday night against Tri-State, and I was a little surprised, so to speak. There was one time out, you just came and players didn't hit the chairs very long, and you were in their face. And I looked, and Doug was just sitting there, and he didn't say anything right away. He gives you that latitude at certain points that you can do what you do.
He does, because that, I mean, the coach does a tremendous job, and that is one thing where he, you know, and I'm thankful for this, he'll cut me loose. You know, and I have some Italian in me, you know, I got some hot blood every once in a while. So in situations like that where we need to get some guys' attention, and don't get me wrong, he can get guys' attention, but there's times where, you know, I can kick it up to another level, if you will.
You gotta let, a head coach has got to let his assistants blow off steam too. You know, and like with me and Arnie, it's we're both very similar. You know, I'm a football guy. That's my background, and he considers himself to have that mentality, even though he wasn't brought up in that environment, so to speak. And then maybe that's a bad thing because we are so similar. But and we're always talking about, you know, you can blow off your steam, but then you got to go and be the good guy, because, you know, Arnie's the bad guy. You know, he's the one who comes down most of all and throws the stuff and everything, and I just sit there and wait till practice is over, and then I throw it. You know?
We've all done that.
You do need to have somebody that they can go to, though. I mean, I don't think you can have 4 head coaches.
Right.
I mean, you need to have one guy. You know, the other assistants, you know, they can speak their mind and say what they want, and when they're not happy with the way things are going, they can voice their opinion. But the players have to realize that there is somebody else, that if they're unhappy with the way things are going, or if coach isn't happy with what they're doing, there's somebody else they can go talk to on another level. And I think that's one of the, at least on our side, it's one of the main roles of the assistant coaches.
Yeah.
How difficult is that position? You are in the middle. Head coach to you, like you say, he wants to relay a thought, and he wants you to do it in a way that the player don't understand, and the player on the other side of the coin may be, I don't want to say afraid, but maybe apprehensive of speaking how they feel. So here you are stuck in the middle. Talk about some of the good and the bads in some situations that you've had.
Well, it is difficult sometimes being in the middle, because you know what Bruce wants, or am I saying I know what Bruce wants, and then I know what the player wants. But ultimately, the message has to get across that it's the way we want to do things, not what they want to do. You know, that's where you've got to, you still want to listen to what they're saying and explain to them why we're doing what we're doing, but they still have to understand that this is the way we're going to do it. Sometimes, you know, maybe being younger, you know, like Mike was talking about being younger, sometimes maybe I can get the point across a little easier than Bruce can, because Bruce is very direct. You know, and sometimes the way he says things, especially on the female side, you can say things to men, you can yell and scream and cuss and do everything you want at them, and they go out and play. You do that to females, then they go cry sometimes. So you've got to be careful of how you do it. And so a lot of times that's where I fall into. And you know, I enjoy it because I know that is my role, and I know someday, just like Joe said, I'll be on the other side and I'll have somebody else do that role. So the good thing about being the assistant is you can say things, but ultimately they're going to be mad at Bruce and not me.
We can put the white hat on and the black hat on every once in a while.
Yeah. So that's the good thing about it.
I don't know about you guys, but players hate me because I'm the one in charge of physical conditioning.
Let's take this one step further, and we're going to gear this primarily towards Mike and Chris, because you are males coaching, in your case, we're talking about the women's soccer team, and in Chris's case, the women's basketball team. Talk about the delicate relationship between a male coaching a female sport.
Can I go first on this one?
Please do.
All right. We kind of have a weird situation because, one, Terry, he's a little bit older, and he directs, you know, his comments a little bit differently than I do as well. So not only is it coming from 2 males, it's coming from 2 different generations. So it's kind of tough.
One's politically correct, one probably isn't.
That's one way to look at it. But there's a lot of times where the girls will come to me and like, oh, Harper, you know what? Terry's yelling at me and he's really not explaining. And I can't pick sides. I'm with Terry 100%. And if the minute I say, yeah, he's nuts, that's when you got major problems. So you got to support your head coach no matter what. At the same time, you got to still communicate to that player that, hey, this is what he wants, and this is, he's not saying you're not a good player, you're doing things wrong, but maybe you can work on this. And pretty much sometimes you got to butter them up. I mean, you can't just be so direct where, like you said, they're just going to go into a shell and you're never going to be able to communicate with that player again. So you really, sometimes it's tough. I mean, you got to be a very sensitive person.
Chris, I know that something that you mentioned when you were on last week, and what Bruce has mentioned in earlier programs, and after some of the games, the fragileness of your particular team, the women's team. It's difficult to deal with at best.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about before, and that's what Mike just said. You can't handle females the same way you handle males. You just can't, because if they do go in the shell, it may be 3 weeks before they come out of it. We had games when we were across town where roommates were fighting before the game, and they take it onto the floor. Whereas guys don't do that for the most part. Well, Joe's giving me a look like maybe they do. But for the most part, I remember when I was playing, if I didn't get along with my roommate, once we got on the floor, we were competing against Indiana Tech or whoever it was. But, sometimes female players are different. So there is a lot of, Mike mentioned, you got to be sensitive. And that's been hard for me. My wife won't say I'm the most sensitive person in the world. She says I'm more sensitive to the players than I am to her. But you do. You get used to figuring out how to handle them, what to say, when to say it. And it takes a while, though. You just can't all of a sudden show up in August and then by the time the season starts know how to handle women's sports, because it doesn't happen like that. It takes a long time. And now, this is my 7th year, so I feel like there are times where I know what to say to them and how to handle it, because I've been around for a long time now.
Yeah, I know one thing that I tell our guys, because I'm a little bit more demonstrative. I'm a little bit more uptight and water cooler and smashing garbage cans and stuff. The main thing, and I think this probably carries over to any sport and whoever, whatever gender may be coaching that sport, but don't listen to what we say, not how we say it. Listen to the message, because everybody will deliver the same message, just a little bit differently. But as long as the point gets across and it's received, then
that's right.
Good things can happen. I mean, people can progress and learn from mistakes. So.
When I coached at Bishop Dwenger with the girls, I never was more harsh on a group of kids than when I coached with Bishop Dwenger. And that was probably in my last year was 96. I was still getting invited to dinner by the parents. I've been invited to a bunch of weddings since then, and every team's different. And athletes you can treat like athletes, but you're going to change your approach on how you handle a group of kids or an individual from year to year. And that's really what it comes down to, understanding the psychology of an athlete.
Exactly.
All athletes are the same, basically, but they're collectively, and just understanding that psychology is.
And it is year to year and player to player.
Yep.
Because there are some players that we can yell and scream and throw out of practice, and then they just come back and play better.
Yep.
And there's others that if you just sort of look at them cross-eyed, they're done. So there's difference between the players as well.
You get into that motivation too. I mean, I know right now we've got a group of guys that need to be externally motivated, and we don't want to do it sometimes, but dang it, if we have to go crazy a couple times to motivate people to get them to produce and perform, we have to. I mean, coaching is a beautiful thing when you've got a bunch of players that are internally motivated and they'll coach themselves. You can just kick back and say, man, let's get after it.
Yeah, right.
It makes it a whole lot easier.
Right.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we want to talk a little bit about the academic side and the travails that have occurred and will occur in the future. But that's when Mastodon Spotlight comes back in just a moment.
For over 3 decades, Dr. James Owen has been credited for helping IPFW become a top-rated school through not only teaching, but also his involvement in the Fort Wayne community.
the kind of people that the city were hiring at the time were people with advanced computer skills. I thought, my Lord, unless my students get up to speed in this particular area, skill and talent, knowledge, that they weren't going to be competitive in the job market.
Dr. Owen developed courses that would train his students to become leaders in the community.
At one time, of the 6 major department heads in the city of Fort Wayne, 3 of them were former students of mine that I'd recommended for the job.
He makes a point to stay in touch with former students, and that makes a difference in their lives.
Whenever I think about undergraduate days, I always think about old Professor so-and-so. She said, I have one like that too. And she said that's Dr. Owen.
IPFW, the right school, right here, right now.
Welcome back to this special edition of Mastodon Spotlight. We're very pleased to have some of the assistant coaches on campus with us on this show. Chris Paul, Dave Schmedlin, Mike Harper, and Joe Pachota. And before I get into an area that I referenced to on the last segment, I want to go back for a moment, Chris. We briefly talked about it on the show you were on, and Mike alluded earlier that in the relationship between the assistant and the head coach, where Mike mentioned Terry Stefankowitz as sort of a father figure. Mm-hmm. You have, and as we touched about this when you were on before, you have a more unique situation in the fact that you are Bruce's son-in-law.
Yes.
Where do you divide the line between head coach, assistant coach, and father-in-law, son-in-law?
Well, I think that's the beauty of our relationship, is there is no line. We're on the same page with everything. You know, they always say that daughters marry people that are like their fathers, and we're a lot alike. And you know, we're looking for the same kid. We're looking for the same style to play. We're looking for the, I mean, everything that we do. It's kind of scary, and I don't know if maybe it's because I've been around him so long, he's turned me into him. Which I don't know, but
besides, he can hold the grandchildren over him. Hey,
you know, and I do that every once in a while when he says something. I said I just won't bring Jalen over. So, but we really do have a very strong relationship, and it's not what Joe mentioned before. It's not a yes relationship. I mean, he knows I don't always get what I want because he's ultimately going to make the final decision, but he knows when I'm not happy about something, or if I think we should do things this way, or we should go see this kid, or we should change this, and he listens to it. So I'm very fortunate with the whole relationship that I have with him.
Let's turn our attention to an area that I referenced on the out cue of the last break, and we talk a little bit off air, and that's the subject of academics. And I promised we're not going to mention names, individual names, but all the teams, I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, have had, do have, and will in the future have problems in terms of when I say we, and I'm speaking as if I were still a coach, which I'm not, but as coaches, you are trying to recruit student athletes that can fit the needs of your particular sport, yet they're coming here to obtain an education because participating in intercollegiate athletics is just a stop or a bump in the road in the game of life. Mm-hmm. And again, the rules, the NAIA, that you can't find the rules, NCAA, you have more rules than you can think about. There are rules where student athletes have to abide by to remain eligible to participate in their particular sport. And as I said, there are problems on all the teams. Talk about, are the rules too stringent, or are they not stringent enough? And how do you balance this, going to school, playing a sport, hammering home the point that, hey, you've got to go to class, you've got to do well on the tests, you've got to get the good grades if you want to achieve what you want to do on the athletic field. Dave, want to start?
Wow.
A lot of questions.
It's I think we're in a different boat than some of the other sports. First of all, because we're so multicultural, we have a lot of people who do not speak. Well, in the past, we've had several people where English wasn't their first language. So from that, and it's always a key player, like a Hector Soto or this year Dennis Santiago. You know, some guy who has struggles with the English a little bit or the reading comprehension, and we're always keeping our fingers crossed. And to those guys' credit, they have always come through in the end. You know, we might have hit a bump in the road here or there, but you know, and you know, this year we've been pretty lucky, and we just did our grades, and you know, over half our team has a 3.0 or higher, with you know, so which is, you know, our team goal is a 3.0. So we've actually come pretty close to that. In the past, we've had major problems. You know, Hector's, or we weren't going to say names, but we've had the major player who was never eligible in the fall. He always struggled with his spring classes, and part of that was the workload. We are all, you know, traveling all the time, and since he does have the trouble with English, you know, those classes that spring during in season were tough for him. But he always came back and did the work in the summer and in the fall to make up and be eligible come springtime. So yeah, it's a juggling act for some of these guys, but when it comes down to his personal responsibility, I think.
No question. No question. And you know, like we touched on during the break, the main thing, you know, is time management. You know, because you have very little time, you know, away from, you know, the particular sport that you're playing. And then you add in travel, wherever that travel may take you. That's the big thing, and Dave hit on the personal responsibility aspect of it. The one thing that we harp on with our guys is there's no such thing as a dumb question. You know, not only the professors, but if you need help, man, come in and ask us. We'll set up tutors, everything that we possibly can. And if they, you know, we're not Kreskin. I mean, we can't read minds. You know, so if they come in and ask us and communicate with us like we communicate with them, you know, everything will be fine. And then like these guys, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been on the phone with professors checking out grades. Well, how's he doing? In progress, in emails. You know, that shows professors that, hey, you know, we're interested in making sure that our student athletes are student athletes. I mean, the first reason that they're here is to get an education, because that's going to last you a whole lot longer than that ball's going to bounce. And it's unfortunate that some individuals don't look at it that way. I think the ones that do are the ones that are obviously successful, because they know that they're going to use basketball or whatever sport they may be playing to get a free education, you know, that will last them a lifetime. And, you know, man, you can experience some great things along the way. But again, the big thing, like Dave touched on, is the personal responsibility, being able to manage your time. You know, you can't lay around in bed on road trips. Get up and study. If you got a class that meets on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, doesn't mean you don't touch the books on Tuesday and Thursday. And that's something that not only incoming freshmen may struggle with, but, you know, shoot, guys that are sophomores, juniors, maybe even seniors struggle with that every once in a while.
Mike, I don't know how much trouble you had with the soccer teams this year. Didn't hear much, but...
Not yet. No, I think we did all right. The thing with our program is a little different from these guys is we have 40 athletes to look after. And with your 40, you're going to have more numbers that aren't doing as well, and vice versa, you know, doing well. We had 2 girls get 4.0s, which is great. We also, I believe, we don't know for sure, but we had a couple student athletes that struggled. And not that they don't lack the skills and the knowledge of, you know, school, they just were a little lazy going to class. And that was the number one thing when I went to school here. If you go to class, you're going to get the grades. And depends on how much you put into it, you're going to get better grades. But some kids just are a little lazy, and it comes down to time management, especially traveling during season. You know, they're tired, they're home from a game, I'm not going to go to class. And sometimes they struggle in the spring because they don't have too much to do. They have so much free time that they don't they don't manage their time well, and they find themselves just blowing off class for a 4-day week and taking a trip somewhere, and they get into trouble doing that. But we keep a pretty close tab on our kids now, and Terry does a real good job of taking them to the professors if they're having trouble. And we tell our students, all of them, that if you are having trouble in a class, come to us before you know it's getting bad. You know, right as soon as you're having problems. That way we can get in there, find out what we need to do, see if there's any extra credit, and take it from there. It's the kids that come in and say, you know, yesterday we had one come in. I think I might have got a D or an F.
Yeah, a week before finals.
Yeah,
thanks.
Class is over, and you know, it's a little too late. So if the kid's responsible enough, they're going to do all right.
You know what? And Arnie tells the guys this all the time, and it's the same for all the programs, is coaches hate surprises. They're not going to get mad at a kid if they're struggling. And they're going to get mad at the reasons why they're struggling, maybe. But, and big deal. But don't surprise your coach or your team, finals week. Surprise them, week 8, week 7, where we can do something about it.
Doug's got a great formula. When we sit down and have face-to-face meeting with kids, we'll ask their opinion. Of course, we'll always email the profs, validate. But if a kid comes up, oh yeah, coach, I'm getting a B, it's always a grade lower.
Yep.
It's always a grade lower.
It goes to American Pie 2 rules.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I'm doing all right. I'm getting a C, and then okay, D. All right, email that prof, call that prof, and I mean that's the way we look at it. And so far, I think we've been right on the money.
Basically, the relationship between you as coaches and the professors here on campus, has it been a good relationship?
I think with any prof, I mean, they just want to be communicated with. And know that their class is not only appreciated, but it's pretty important, and that's the way we look at it.
I think the faculty on this campus appreciates it when the student takes the initiative to introduce themselves. We make all the kids give their profs a schedule so that they have a cross-reference when they do attendance and knowing what days they're going to be gone and all that. But we tell our kids, you need to go introduce yourself to the professor. You need to know the office hours. You need to, communicate with him that you are going to be gone. What can I do to make up the work I'm going to miss or whatever, And the staff, all the people in 8 years that I've been here, I've never run across a professor that we've had a problem with. Arnie will probably say that there have been guys that we have had problems with in some way or another. But then we also have Elliot Blumenthal and I forgot what's his name?
Moses Dupre.
Moses and the guy over in geology, Carl Drummond, have all been very helpful in helping to smooth over those bumps as well. So that it's part of its personal responsibility, taking the initiative, being proactive.
But we've got a lot of support people that are going to bat for student athletes in any way that they possibly can. But if the student athlete doesn't want to put themselves in a position to be successful, unfortunately our hands are tied, because we're all here to make sure that they're successful both on the court and off the court. If they don't want to do it, no matter what we try and do or support people try and do, it's an unfortunate thing.
We don't have too much time left, unfortunately, but there are 2 other questions that I would like to ask before we're out of time. One is the public perception of whether or not IPFW will be successful as a Division I school. Talk about that one first, then I have one final question for you. Do you feel, as coaches and as individuals, that we're going to make it as a D1 school? And do you feel that the public will come over and feel the same way if it's affirmative?
I personally feel that we will make it. That the city of Fort Wayne is too large, and the population is too large not to have a Division I program. It's going to take some time. I know personally with our program, what we need to do is we need to win some ball games. We need to win some ball games. We need to get some local athletes in here so that we can start getting some people in the seats, so that then they can start getting exposed a little more to IPFW and see that, maybe we can beat a Ball State. We can beat a Valpo. We can beat these other Division I schools inside the state of Indiana and realize that IPFW can do the same thing. So I think it's going to take some time, but I think from the community people that we've talked to, we're getting a lot of support out there right now. I think it's an exciting time, and I see big things in the future.
Mike?
For a soccer aspect, we will definitely be a solid Division I program in a few years. Otherwise, Terry and I wouldn't be here. We don't draw big crowds, so it's just basically having a successful team. With our showcase for next year, we're bringing in the #1 team in the nation, North Carolina, who's won 16 out of the last 20 national championships, which is huge, and that's going to be a big draw. So that's kind of our main focus of, presenting us as a program to the public. But as a total, these guys are great coaches, and we're going to get the wins. It's going to take maybe a year or 2, but they're going to get there. I mean, the first year, we're going to take our thumps. Everybody is. But we will get there. Otherwise, I don't think any one of us would be here.
No.
Yeah, that's just it, man. I mean, it's all about time. You know, if people there, like Chris said, there's a ton of support in this town. And another unfortunate thing is the people that are backing athletics in the move to Division I aren't nearly getting enough recognition as the naysayers. You know, the people that are doubting. And that's fine. They can doubt all they want. But over time, you're going to see the progression, like Mike touched on. And they got North Carolina coming in, you know, best team in the country. Men's volleyball continues to bring in some of the top teams all the time. You know, I don't know what we're doing. We're going playing Michigan State and Michigan. I mean, that's insane. But, you know, we're making the progress, we're making the strides, and it's going to take some time. But great things will happen. There's no doubt in our minds. And I feel bad for the people who, you know, might have some reservations as far as believing in that, because in due time they'll find out.
I'm told we literally have just seconds left. Final question I'd like to ask, and Dave, you had a taste of it. You're all assistants now. I would think that someday you would all like to be a head coach. Yes, no, and in your own thoughts, how much time do you think you need to still remain as an assistant before you feel you're ready to be a head coach? Joe, we'll start with you.
I don't know. Whenever you have opportunities to move on in coaching, I think as assistants, when you get a job, the first thing you want to do is, all right, where can I go from here? You know, and it's just all about timing and what you're comfortable with. And the situation that I'm in right now, I know that there's areas I need to continue to get better at. Great working relationship with Doug, and my time will come when and where that may be. That's not in my hands, but we'll see what happens.
Mike?
As far as my situation goes, I think that the role I'm in right now is great. As far as being a head coach, there's some weeks where I am a head coach. You know, I got best of both worlds. I got to blame Terry when things go bad, I can hide. And when things go great, you know, I'm there as a head coach. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm in a great situation. I'm here to build, Terry and I are here to build together a dynasty. We're trying to create something that will carry on for years, and you know, that's good enough for me.
Dave?
Yeah, I want to be a head coach. At some point, it's going to have to choose an avenue, men or women. The opportunities on the men's side are nil to none. Women's side, a lot of opportunities, but then you have the gender equity and all that kind of stuff. So then people are not looking to hire men to coach women's teams right now. It's just a wait and see, and like Joe said, just opportunities arise.
Chris, you have the final say.
Someday I will. But the relationship Bruce and I have, we're in this because it's a family deal. You know, we're in this because it is family, and I'm not in a position where I'm going to go looking. If something comes up, I may go talk to somebody, but I'm not looking to leave town. I mean, because then all of a sudden you leave your father-in-law, and then he can't see his daughter and his grandson. So, you know, if I've got to wait 15 years and Bruce is going to stick around till he's, let me do the math, I better not do that. But, you know,
Wow.
but you know where I'm coming from. If I got to stay here with Bruce that long, then that's what I'll do. So.
Gentlemen, it's been fun. I hope it's been as much fun for you as it has been for me. I really appreciate all of you taking time out of your schedules to be with us on this show. Continued success, both as assistants and hopefully someday as head coaches as well. But thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
This has been a special edition of Mastodon Spotlight. We thank Chris Paul, Dave Schmedlin, Mike Harper, and Joe Pachota for appearing with us, as we thank you, the viewer, for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW Athletics. We invite you to come back next week for another edition of Mastodon Spotlight. But until then, this is Mike Moss saying, have a great week and go Dons.
long time ago, somebody was once asked, where's the best place to find fame and riches? And the answer was, go west, young man, go west. Well, the IPFW basketball team went west over the Christmas holidays. To see if they found fame and riches, stay tuned to Mastodon Spotlight, which is coming up next. Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Maz. Welcome once again to Mastodon Spotlight. Hope everybody had a great holiday, Christmas and New Year's. And we're going to find out now in the opening part of this week's program whether the IPFW men's basketball team had a good holiday. As we welcome back to the show, head men's basketball coach Doug Knoll. And Doug, first and foremost, are you glad to be home?
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, traveling's great, but it's always great to be home and sleep in your own bed and you know, get the comforts of what you're used to. But again, we had a great trip. I think the kids got to see a lot. We got to spend some time as a team and grow a little bit. And but we're ready now for, I think, 5 of the next 6 games at home and to pull those white uniforms out of the closet.
Before we talk about the upcoming schedule and before we talk about the 2 trips out west that you made, let's get away from basketball for a moment. As you mentioned the last time you and I spoke on the show, basketball is great, it's a great game, and we go on trips and we play the game, but there are other things besides basketball. Granted, for these 2 trips, that meant airplane, motels, going back and forth. Talk about the logistics of the trips first and foremost. Granted, it was great that we played 5 quality opponents, but the team got to do things besides play basketball.
Yeah, I think, you know, last year in scheduling, you know, we didn't know how it was going to go, and when teams started to say, yeah, we'll play you, we'll pay you a guarantee, and come on out, we jumped on that, and then after we got kind of through the mix, we kind of sat back and said, that's a lot of traveling, isn't it? But it was great. We ended up playing, 5 games, and we weren't in school, which, helped a lot for the kids because of our really brutal first part of the season schedule. Our kids missed a lot of class, and now we were able to travel some and over the break, and they didn't have the confines of missing class, and so that was good in itself. When you played these 5 games, a lot of people thought we were kind of nuts, to come back. But I thought it was really important to get the kids back home for Christmas with their families and spend some time. We got back on a Sunday night late, and Wednesday morning we took off again for Oregon State. We got back in from Montana State, and we got to do and see a lot of things that some of these kids, had never been able to see before or do. And see the Rocky Mountains, and go into Denver and down to Fort Collins, Colorado State, where we were down 6 at half and played a pretty good first half. Jeremy King got hurt in the second half of that game, and that spilled over to the Montana State game. And then at Montana State, we played without Jeremy King. I think we brought him in about 8 to 10 minutes in the second half, and he was hobbled with a bruised tailbone, and then D'Angelo Woodall made a great defensive play but got knocked out of bounds and landed on the back of a chair with his head, cut his head open, had 8 stitches, and we were without him through a good part of the first half and most of the second half. He got back with about 3 minutes to go in the game. So, it's like, what else could happen this year? And, it's not only a tough schedule, no doubt, but it seems like every time we start to feel like we're going to be able to to get a win, then something comes up and bites us, and two of your starters getting hurt, and then we lose the game by 4. That didn't help. But we came back from the Christmas break, or came back for Christmas, took back off for Oregon State, and this was exciting. I mean, you get to Oregon State, a Pac-10. You've got Gary Payton's jersey hanging there, AC Green, a few other guys that were in the pros, and we played Oregon State pretty well the first half. Again, down 9 with just 3 possessions. Second half, several of our big kids got in foul trouble, and that hurt us a little bit, and I think we ended up losing by 23 or something like that. But that was pretty good. The Long Beach game, I think the travel caught up with us. I think we had 4 games in 8 days in 4 states, including coming back home and going back out again. And Long Beach was not one of the toughest teams we had played, and we just did not show up. And I think part of it was that fatigue factor, getting down to San Diego State. We had about 3 days rest. We got to spend some time in San Diego. We took the kids to the zoo, which was a great thrill for a lot of them. And then we played really well against the Aztecs, who barely got beat by Duke. I think we were down 10 with 5 minutes to go, down 12 at half, and we really gave them a game. The problem was we were 1 of 18 from 3, which is uncharacteristic of us. But that was tough in itself. But I think that the trips really allowed the kids to see parts of the country, that the Rockies, the Northwest, California, around the Long Beach, LA area, and then down to San Diego. We spent New Year's there, and so all in all, it was a great trip. But I think everybody is glad to get home.
Let's go back and talk about some of those games in a little more detail, some of the X's and O's, and let's start with the Colorado State Rams from the WAC. You go out there, and then one of the questions that I asked you, and I think I surprised you, the altitude, playing a mile high. Did that have a factor now looking back? How much of a factor was it?
Well, it didn't seem to. It was kind of funny because we practiced the night before when we got in, and I think the guys really were kind of surprised that it did affect them, but they said as they pushed through, they got their second wind and were able just to continue on and really not pay much attention to it. Once we played the game, we really played an excellent first half. We shot the ball well. We were down 6 at half. And again, they made a couple runs in the second half, which I think they beat us by 20. But they're really a good basketball team in the Mountain West, and they're going to give a lot of people, really a tough time this year, I think. And they should finish in the upper part of the conference. Now, the one thing that we didn't count on with them is they, like us, we had Terry Collins, who was eligible for that game, out in Colorado State. And Terry struggled on that trip, but has since really played well. They also got a player named Clark, and he lit us up for 25 that game.
Sure did.
We never had him on the scouting report because he was a new player, and I tell you what, he was every bit as good as anybody they had and better, and he was a Division II transfer coming in from Warner Southern or somewhere, Florida. I'm not sure where he came from. It was in Florida, but 6'6", huge, kind of remind you of Charles Barkley, and he shot the 3, took it inside, and basically kind of dismantled us. And that was the one player that we could not control. Without him, we may have made it a game, but he's really going to add to their team and their conference run, because he's a player. He'll be heard from in that league.
Yeah, some of his numbers: 9 of 11 from the floor, 2 of 2 from 3, 5 of 6 at the line. As you said, 25 points.
He probably didn't play a half a game.
Yeah, only 26 minutes of action. So, and there were a lot of fouls in that game. 54 fouls between the two teams. Looking at the free throws, you get a great chance to work on the free throws.
Right.
We were 28 of 39. They were 25 of 30.
Yeah. And I was really impressed by that, because we really got in the bonus early, Mike, and really attacked the basket, and that kept us in a lot, because we were aggressive, and anytime you can play aggressive like that, you're going to hang around games, and the officials do favor the aggressors. Kids getting on loose balls and everything, they tend to, kind of slide your way a little bit, and it's very ironic that we go in and shoot more free throws than the home team. That hasn't happened a lot this year. So that was a great part of the game too.
Well, final was 92-71, Rams on top. Then, as you said, you went over to Bozeman, Montana, and 2 days later took on Montana State. And we didn't know until you just mentioned the fact about the injuries with Jeremy being hurt and Dee getting hurt. You're down 14 at the break, and yet you come back. And numbers are always misleading sometimes. Both teams 22 of 57 from the floor for the game. We outscored them in threes, 9-6. We out-rebounded them 37-36. But going back to what you just said about the free throw disparity, we were 6 of 8 from the stripe. They were 13 of 16. And though you were down by 14, you made a game of it and only lost by 4.
Yeah, it amazes me how you can shoot 39 free throws in one game and 8 in another game and you know, kind of keep the same consistency. And those are things that, you know, we try to do. We try to get to the basket some, and because we are a perimeter-oriented team, but we don't want to rely on that a lot. And this was a game where we were two different teams. I mean, we went into the game without knowing if Jeremy was going to play for us at all, because he got thrown down at Colorado State and bruised his tailbone, and he just was limping around. But we decided second half, let's play him. Let's, you know, because he was hurt, but it wasn't an injury. It wasn't like it's going to be or affect him permanently. So it was just a matter of, you know, he had a hard time running. And in basketball, you know, if you got a hard time running, you're in trouble. But he did get through and play about 8 to 10 minutes against Montana State. But we really played about as bad of a first half as I've seen all year. It probably matched Long Beach, but we were down 14, didn't have any semblance of looking like a Division I basketball team. We were throwing the ball out of bounds. We were traveling. We didn't seem like we had any energy. And, you know, to be honest with you, we were pretty upset at halftime and let the guys know it. You know, we were not happy with the effort we provided in the first half. And second half we came out and really took charge of the game. I mean, I'm not sure what the score was. I think it was something like 38-24 at half. But the next time I looked, it was 40-40. So, you know, we ran off about a 16-2 run to tie the game. It was also 53-all down the stretch, and we really came back. Jim Kesnick scored like 5 out of our first 6 possessions. We really went to Jim, and this was like his 3rd, 4th game back, and he really started to get, you know, his wind, his momentum, and really did an outstanding job in helping us, you know, make a comeback. It was just disappointing that, you know, we couldn't finish the job out there, and you know, had a couple unfortunate turnovers down the stretch again, or that game was very winnable. And of course, it didn't hurt that or help that, you know, D'Angelo got hurt during the game and missed a big chunk, and then, you know, Jeremy was hurt. But great effort again to lose by 4 on the road out there to them, especially being down 14. I thought we played one of our better halves of the year.
Well, as you said, then you went to Corvallis, Oregon. You made the trip home for Christmas, and then you came back and got on the Big Bird and went back out to the Northwest, and you took on the Oregon State Beavers from the Pac-10. And as you said earlier, obviously a great atmosphere there in Corvallis. That's truly with the big boys. And you were close. You're only down 5 with 1:20 to go in the first half. And then they went on a little mini run to finish the half. You're down 9, as you said, 3 possessions. But then they opened up with 9 straight points to start the second half, and we really never could recover from that.
Yeah, I was disappointed in our start again, and we just, you know, sometimes we don't realize the nature of, you know, how good these teams are, and if you even, you know, take a breath and kind of relax, you know, they're going to run the gamut on you, and that's basically what happened. I mean, we. You know, and whether we were playing with these teams or whether they're ready to play us is not our concern. It's that we have to fight and scratch and find a way to just stay in these games. And we didn't come out ready to play the second half, and they jumped on us. And, you know, took it to 20 or so right away. And that's kind of how, you know, we battled the rest of the game. But this team's good. We got a chance to play them the next 2 years now, and hopefully play them a little better. We'll play them back here next year at the Coliseum, and then the following year we go back out there again. But this is good basketball. They only lost to Arizona by 3 the week before, beat Arizona State. So You know, we're playing these teams, you know, we're playing halves pretty good, but now what we've got to do is we've got to play a full 40-minute game, and that's what we've got to concentrate on the second half of the season. It's not going to do us any good to play an easier schedule now and not take what we've learned from these difficult games and put them to work. If we don't do that, we've just basically ran around the country and you know, have not learned anything really from these games, but hopefully we have.
Now, final score there was Oregon State 84, IPFW 59. Time for a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the other two games on the trip, and then we'll look ahead because we've got 3 games coming up in the next 10 days or so, which are critical to the schedule as well. But we'll talk about all that and more when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
With over 30 years of dedication to his students, Professor of Geosciences Deepak Chowdhury recognizes the IPFW experience.
He doesn't spoon feed you all the information that you need. He mostly will give you all of the knowledge that you need in bits and pieces. And it's almost like a puzzle where he gives you all the pieces, and in the end you'll put it together and have the larger picture yourself. I really enjoy it. He's a great professor to work with and for.
IPFW is one of only 3 universities in the state to offer students hands-on experience with their own seismograph. This gives Dr. Chowdhury great pride, but it is the interaction with his students that has kept him teaching.
When the students understand the concept, what's happening, that glimmer of light in their eyes, that you cannot trade for any money. So that's the most important thing.
IPFW, the right school, right here, right now.
A Stargate. That's the door to other worlds that my character Tilk and the rest of my team use on Stargate SG-1. It's a door to exploration and exciting adventure. And education can provide you with a similar passageway to a world full of possibilities. So stay in school and graduate.
Have you saved a life today?
I took 2 flood victims to a shelter.
I donated a day's pay to help a family that lost everything in a fire.
Have you saved a life today?
I teach a class in infant CPR.
I donated a pint of blood.
Have you saved a life today?
No, but today somebody saved mine.
The American Red Cross. Together, we can save a life.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. We're visiting with the men's head basketball coach at IPFW, Doug Knoll. And Doug, we've talked about 3 of the 5 games on the West Coast trip. Now let's look at the other 2 games. And we'll start off with finishing off the 2001 portion of the schedule at Long Beach State. You go from Corvallis, Oregon in the Pacific Northwest, shoot straight south down the West Coast to the Los Angeles area, greater Los Angeles area. A little bit different climate, so to speak, going from Oregon down to Southern California?
Yeah, a little bit. You know, we saw Mount St. Helens and Mount Hood and some of the great landscaping of the Northwest. We flew Alaskan Airlines down to John Wayne in Orange County, and that was exciting. The weather wasn't as good as I'd liked, but everybody I talked to going to Florida and all those places had some tough weather too. So we could still wear shorts and a light jacket, and that was great. But it did rain most of the time in LA area, especially game day Saturday. And if you don't mind, we can just bypass the Long Beach game and move on. We just did not play well for whatever reason. Maybe it was the 4 games in 8 days and the travel back and forth. Long Beach did tell us they were nervous playing us, and they had scouted most of our games and thought we really hung around and played really a difficult schedule very well. But were surprised at our effort, as were the coaching staff. But it looked like we were just very, very tired and very fatigued, but we still didn't make an effort, and that's no excuse. And I was very disappointed in the play of our guys, and let them know that. And basically we had to kind of refocus, redial it up going down to San Diego. So the Long Beach game was very much of a disappointment to us.
I would like to make one mention of one person, and that is Terry Collins. He did have a team-high 20 points in that game with Long Beach. How nice is it to have Terry finally able to contribute to the ball club on the floor?
Well, Mike, I'm glad you mentioned that, because sometimes I get in my own little world of just getting very upset with the effort. But Terry did a fantastic job on that trip. He kind of tried to get some things into the flow on our Colorado-Montana trip, but you could see that after a year and a half off, he was just a little rusty. Well, we got to Oregon State, and he ended up knocking 14 points down for us against a Pac-10 team, and then came back with 20 against Long Beach and shot the ball very well. And it's something that we're looking forward to the second half of the year with Terry. Then at San Diego State, he didn't shoot the ball as well, and maybe had 8 or 9 points. But the Long Beach game, he really kept us from really getting blown out, by his effort, and we're just real excited to have him. I mean, he's got 3.5 years with us now, and hopefully, he's going to be maybe not the point guard of the future, but he can play both combo positions, 1 and 2, and he's got a nose for the ball. He can score. He's strong, and we're looking forward to that.
Well, let's look ahead now to the final game on the trip. You start the 2002 portion of the schedule off. San Diego State, what a place. I kidded you off air. Someday maybe, and one of my goals is I'd like to play Torrey Pines golf course. It's gorgeous country. But San Diego State is a very improved basketball team under the leadership of Steve Fisher, who was the former Michigan coach. And they also play in that same Mountain West Conference that Colorado State plays in.
Right.
And they had just made a little trip to Durham, North Carolina, and as you said, played #1 ranked Duke and only lost by 12 at Cameron. They played very well, so now you get them on their floor, and they're sky high, and yet for the most part, you played them well.
Yeah, we really did. I think the only thing that we really didn't do well was shoot the basketball, which we were 1 of 18 from 3. And Nick was 1 of 8, and really that's the one that he made was in the second half. And we came out, and he got a couple good looks right off the bat, and they went in and out. And for whatever reason, I mean, I think we felt much better as a group. We had some time to rest, even though we did practice a couple times, and we really dialed it up. I mean, in this whole stretch, we haven't been able to practice a lot and practice hard because of the travel and the time constraints, and it's a day before a game or whatever, or we were just always something that didn't allow us to just get back and really just go at it, and the San Diego trip allowed us to do that. So we went back to step 1 of almost early preseason and really dialed it up and had a hard 2.5 hour practice the first day, came back with another hard 1.5 hour practice the second day, and focused all on effort. I mean, everything was just all out on effort. Give us your effort. And I guess, to be blunt with you, that's part of what I've been discouraged with this team. It's not only difficult playing the schedule we're playing, but we can't pick and choose our times to give effort. It's got to be every single time we step on the floor, and that's got to be a guarantee, and we can't be talking about that. And the difficulty is we've had to some this year, but I think as a young team we're kind of learning that process now. So hopefully we're going to go through the second half of the year and do that. But what a great thrill to play in Cox Arena. Last year IU was beaten by Kent State there in the West Region of the NCAA tournament, and we were able to play there. Going to go back there next year again and play and hopefully do better. But they were coming off a Duke win. 2 days later they played Columbia there and beat them by 20 out of the Ivy League, and Columbia's a pretty good team. So I was real pleased that I think it ended up we were down 10 with about 5 minutes to go. They had pushed it to 18 or 20, and we made a couple runs in the second half, even got it down to 8 a couple different times, but just couldn't get it over the hump because they have a couple kids that really were outstanding in that game. They're big. Their point guard was 6'7", and they really were strong and quick. In fact, as coaches, we talked about they probably had better personnel overall than maybe even Michigan State. But Michigan State has a toughness that you just don't get out of most teams, and that's through Coach Izzo, but they were very talented. And Steve, Coach Fisher, I got to know when I was at Spring Arbor, and he was in Michigan. I watched him practice quite a few times with the Fab Five and all those, and so I got to know him, and he really complimented our team and how we played that game and how we were doing in the season, but that was a great, really a great game for us to come back, bounce back a little bit, and really play at a high level. And like I said, the only really thing we didn't do was knock shots down when we had them. But I thought we were strong inside. Matt Shepard picked up 11 points for us, 9 in the first half, and gave us a little bit of scoring from that standpoint. Nick was solid, and D'Angelo Woodall played well in that game too. So I thought D really came back and really helped us bring some energy to the table in that game.
Well, the trip's over, and the record doesn't reflect, perhaps in some cases, how well the team did play. We didn't win a game, but as I've said on this show before, you can't always judge a team by wins and losses. You got to judge them by their performance and the effort that you and your staff are trying to impart on them to do every time out. We're home now, and as you said at the start of the show today, I think 5 of the next 6 games are here at the friendly confines of the Hilliard Gates Sports Center. As this show is aired, you will have already played a game, which is actually tonight, against Chicago State from the Mid-Con. In our remaining time yet today, Doug, look ahead, talk about this game against Chicago State, and then there are 2 more games that will be played before we get a chance to visit again. One against Eastern Kentucky next Tuesday, and then a game we're going to televise on College 56 Sports on the 19th against Illinois Chicago from the Horizon League. But let's start with the Chicago State game.
Well, as I mentioned, Mike, if you take the games that we've played in the first part of the year and you can use those games to your advantage for the second part of the year, then I think we're going to be fine. We've got what I would call a schedule-friendly second half of the season. It's more teams to our level. In fact, Chicago State is ranked in the Sagarin ratings about 320 maybe, or 315 out of 327. And, most likely we'll finish towards the bottom of the Mid-Con, and so it's a great opportunity for us. Now, that doesn't mean they're a bad basketball team, but, because they do some things well. They got 6'8", 6'9" inside, and this Clark Bone is just, he's a man-child inside. He's strong. They've got some quickness at the guards, but the one thing they don't do is they don't shoot the basketball well. They have a tendency to turn it over. They got beat by 53 by Marquette and 30 like 3 other times. So, if we come out and can make a big effort for 40 minutes, we've got a great chance to win this game, and we haven't had that, too often this year. I mean, to play at a high level, we can get close to some of these teams, but, right now the winning is not kind of in the mix the first half of the year, and we all know, computer rankings, you put all the information in and it comes out, but when you have the 11th toughest schedule in the country out of 327, I think we can be proud of that. I think we can look at it and say, hey, we're not backing down, and part of it is so that we can play better in the second half of the year. It's almost conference time for us now, even though we're an independent. We have to look at it that way. And I think Chicago State's a very winnable game. Next Tuesday we go to Eastern Kentucky. They just won their first Division I game this year. They'd beaten a couple non-Division I similar to us. Again, we're on the road, but if we can play well that game, it's a definite chance that we can win. And again, according to the kids, if they're going to be ready to play and make this effort, then we've got a shot. And then we come back that same week and play here against Illinois Chicago, which is a very good team out of the Horizon. Jimmy Collins, their coach, who was at Illinois with Lou Henson for a long time, played at New Mexico State for Lou, has a great program, and that's going to be a tough game for us, no doubt about it. 1 o'clock game at the Gates. So, the next couple weeks we've got an exciting schedule. We're getting back 2 out of the 3 games, and hopefully we'll be ready to play.
Well, we wish you well, and we'll visit with you again in about 2 weeks, because we won't be able to be here next week. But good luck in these upcoming games.
Thanks, Mike.
Doug Knoll has been our first guest, the head men's basketball coach here at IPFW. We'll take a break, and when we come back, something different, as we're going to talk track with track coach Rick Norton. But that's when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
Was in another lifetime, one of toil and blood. When blackness was a virtue, the road was.
If we do not take responsibility for saving animals from extinction, we allow a part of ourselves to die with them. Help World Wildlife Fund protect animals in the places where they live by ordering a free action kit. Together, we can leave our children a living planet.
Come in, she said, I'll give ya shelter from the storm.
They came from every corner of the country. From small towns and big cities. But they all shared one thing in common. They belonged to a family called Marines. A tough and determined few, dedicated to protecting everything we hold sacred. And still they come. Celebrate the 225-year history of those proud few who have earned the title Marine.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Time to change gears, so to speak, as we're going to move away from basketball. And the rest of this program, we're going to discuss track and field. And we welcome back to the program the head track coach here at IPFW, Rick Norton. Welcome back, Rick.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here.
It's been a while since we've had a chance to visit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about track and field and what we're going to try to talk about this week. Men's and women's track and field.
Right.
Initially indoor, and we'll segue it into outdoor.
Right.
A brief description of indoor track and field.
Well, indoor is not much different from outdoor. They basically run on a 200-meter track instead of a 400-meter track. So consequently, the events just are shortened. I believe we normally have about 18 events run indoor versus 20 to 21 events outdoor. You know, there's a few throwing events we cannot throw indoors, and then the steeplechase is not done indoors. So I guess that'd be about 17. Other than that, it pretty much duplicates all the events that we do outdoors.
High jump, long jump,
all the field events.
pole vault,
yep.
Shot put available
put.
indoors.
Yep. They even have an indoor weight that takes place of the hammer.
Wow.
So we have a 20-pound indoor weight that the women throw and a 35-pound indoor weight that the men throw.
When we talk about indoor track as opposed to outdoor track, the outdoor track, we're used to 8 lanes in most cases. Indoor track, how many lanes do we have?
It will all vary on the location of the meet, depending on where we go. Purdue, IU, Notre Dame. Notre Dame has even a larger track than 200. I think theirs is, I want to say 340 meters, or it might even be 360 meters. Very large indoor track. The number of lanes will vary anything from 4 to 6. And all they do is run more heats with less people in each race. But other than that, they're pretty much the same.
On the indoor side, is it geared more for an invitational type where you have a number of teams competing, or is it still pretty much either what I've been used to when we first met when you were at Carroll, dual or triangular meets or a quad meet?
Actually, the big movement is definitely in an environment that tries to bring in a number of teams. Most of the meets we will be going to will be on Fridays and Saturdays. In fact, a majority of them are just on Saturdays. And there might be anywhere from 15 to 50 teams show up, and usually they are unscored, and the athletes participate. Now they recognize places, finishes, official marks and everything. It's just, I guess, the collegiate way of trying to obtain the best possible competition for a single setting. You don't see a lot of schools universities try to host a triangular or a quad meet. Now, there are some out there. I think like Purdue might have 2 of them. IU, I think, has 2. We do not have any on our schedule this year. All of our meets are really going to the larger relay type environment, or there'll be multiple teams running, multiple heats, and then you're trying to, see how well you can do as compared to the whole field that's brought in.
Would it be fair to say that in some ways the indoor track season is more of a preparatory for outdoor track in the sense that you're getting your team assembled, you've got multiple events, you go to invitationals. Some of the races may be shorter in terms of the distance races,
right?
As opposed to when you get outdoors, but it gives you and Mike Frucci, your assistant, a chance to test, so to speak, the different events, different people, whether they would be better off at a shorter distance or a longer distance as far as the running events are concerned?
I think that thought process is very correct at the high school level. We kind of, when I was at the high school level, viewed the indoor as almost a preseason training for the outdoor. At the collegiate level, however, they actually have and recognize an NCAA indoor championship meet. You participate in a conference championship meet. So you have a complete separate set of standards that you have to hit in order to qualify for the NCAA finals, and you also are recognized for your place in the conference by where you place in the conference meet indoors. So if you look at that and the fact that the NCAA recognizes indoor and outdoor track as 2 separate sports, it probably is not really looked at like that on the collegiate level. You actually kind of gear your training and try to focus to peak points. You want to try to peak at the end of the indoor season and then go through a mild recovery period and then get into another load period to set up your second peak at the end of the outdoor season. So we actually have to address it as 2 separate seasons, and that gets kind of tricky.
I'm going to give my age away, but I can remember several years ago being a native of Detroit when the NCAA indoor meet used to be held at Cobo Arena in Detroit, and I can remember because it was sponsored and hosted by the University of Michigan.
Wow.
And I can remember some occasions where that was a phenomenal meet, just watching it. Talk about the coaching aspect a little bit. You and Mike have a difficult job watching a lot of athletes. In the course of a meet, where do you put yourselves? Because there are multiple events going on simultaneously.
Well, I guess the great thing about it is I'd be the last to say or sit up here and say that I coach all of them, or that I take half of them, Mike takes half of them. The unique thing about our program is that we have 8 coaches. I've got 8 coaches on the staff. Now, not all of them are paid. In fact, most of them are volunteer. But really, without the coaches, the program, I don't think, could go in the right direction. And in fact, it's kind of interesting that you bring that up. For me to have even considered this job, I contacted the people I wanted to have in place before I even considered it. And once I knew the people were willing to come with me, move with me, be a part of the team, I was really more encouraged to do that. And these are the people who really are able to take each event, work with the athletes specifically. I'm a firm believer in I'm not going to have an athlete go over here in the corner and try to figure out an event by themselves. And I think when you get a large population of athletes and an understaffed coaching assignment, you see a lot of kids trying to learn by trial and error because there's no one there. So really, as far as the day of the meet, I'm trying to get video of the athletes while they're participating for the purpose of that coach taking the video and then analyzing it with the athlete, next week. So, now I look at my areas that I coach specifically with more of an evaluating eye. But as far as the events that I really don't coach, I pretty much just get the video.
Before we break from our first segment here, could you be kind enough to mention the names of your trusty assistants?
Sure.
Because they are an unsung lot of people.
Exactly. We've got Eric McCarroll, and Coach McCarroll, he coaches some of the jumps, also works with the sprints. We've got Coach Treadway. Coach John Treadway is a volunteer coach who specifically focuses on the hurdles. I've got Coach Monahan, Pat Monahan, who helps us with our throws. I've got Coach Matt Quinn. Coach Quinn also assists with our throws, since we've got, and a lot of people don't recognize that you have 4 different throwing events at the college level. You've got the traditional shot and disc, but not a lot of people are aware that we have, the hammer throw outdoor and the indoor weight throw, and then the javelin. And then we've got Coach Bob McClintock, and Coach McClintock focuses primarily on the pole vault. And then Coach Frucci heads up the distance, and then his wife comes out and also helps deal with the different breakdowns in distance. And I think I mentioned all 8 there. I'm hoping I didn't forget anyone.
Well, before we actually do take the break, besides being the overall overseer of the program, what is your specific area of expertise that you work with in more detail?
I mean, with my experience as an athlete in track and coaching for 16 years, and I'm not saying that that's a long time, but I really feel quite comfortable with almost all of them, with maybe the exception of the throws. And the pole vault is not a specialty area of mine, but as far as the sprints, the jumps, I feel very comfortable with those. The relays, I usually try to hover in those areas. So, and it all depends on, who we have at a specific practice and what do they want to work on. Because we do have athletes that practice multiple events, and we have athletes who are interested in the decathlon.
Our subject here is track and field, both men's and women's. Our guest is the head track coach, Rick Norton. We'll take a break, and then we'll continue our discussion when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
It's the most magnificent sight in the universe. This planet full of life and wonder. This planet we call home. As an Earth Team volunteer, you can help the Natural Resource Conservation Service care for it, right in your own community. Call 1-888-LAND-CARE to find out how, because there's just no place like home.
Today's teenagers, the way people talk, you'd think they can't do anything right. It's just not so. We get to know over 300,000 kids a year, smart kids, who know what they want. They believe in themselves, and they believe in America. Some go straight to college. Others choose to learn leadership, discipline, courage, and commitment first with us. Today's military, making a stronger America, one good kid at a time.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. We're visiting with the head track and field coach here at IPFW, Rick Norton, as we are discussing both indoor track and field and soon to be a little bit more detail outdoor track and field. And Rick, now that we've given plaudits to the people behind the scenes, let's talk a little bit about the academic part of it. Obviously, track and field, as you mentioned, most of the indoor meets will be on Friday and Saturdays, and I haven't, we haven't even brought up the outdoor season yet. But how do you and your staff get the balance for these student athletes between the classroom and the track?
Well, and that's a very good question. I think that can be pretty stressful on an individual student's ability to achieve high academics when they're not in class. So we've tried to address that problem by almost completely scheduling only weekend meets. And how we run it, we will be taking a chartered bus to all of our meets this year, which is a step up for us, because last year we were in vans, so we're going to feel like we're really
high off the hog.
Yes, we're really looking forward to that. We will have, I think we have 4 meets the entire year that go on a Friday and Saturday. We will not stay overnight. What we will do is we will identify the athletes who will participate on Friday night, and they will go down in a van. They will return Friday. And then we will take the rest of the team on Saturday, go down on Saturday, return on Saturday. And not that I really like this, because I do like the sense of the team leaving and returning together. I just think for the makeup of the team, a lot of the athletes do work, studies. We're trying to minimize their time on the road and their time away from home, really. We want to try to get there and get back as quickly as we can, and not try to consume the whole weekend. We are definitely moving in the right direction in regards to scholarship money and available monies, but we aren't at the point right now where I can feel I can demand 100% commitment from an athlete. These athletes are trying to work their way through college, a lot of them, and the amounts of money that I can offer them right now, I don't think warrants my ability to be able to demand that. And it is a concern as to how much time on the weekends we're going to be gone, because for a lot of them, that's the time they work. And I'm hoping that with next year and in the near future, as our amounts for scholarship go up, that will change. And that's a philosophy that I look forward to where we have a group of individuals that we can sit here and say, okay, let's really get something going here, and we're going to put a higher demand on the athlete at that time.
As far as the, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, academic gods down in Indianapolis, otherwise known as the NCAA, is concerned, how much time can the student athletes spend? For example, I believe basketball is 20 hours a week. With track and field, are you, what's the word I'm looking for, restricted into how much time they can participate, spend in practice and in meets?
Well, you're limited to how many practices you can have per week, and in a 7-day period you have to have at least 1 day of rest. We really don't run into too many other conflicts along a timeline. I think the major conflicts we have to be aware of as coaches, and the athlete has to be aware of as a participant, would definitely be the GPA requirements and the number of hours that they have to pass each semester. And the NCAA at the Division I level kind of ups the ante a little bit more, and with each year you have to progress towards a major. You just can't pass 24 hours. Each year, a certain number of those hours have to be directly related to your major. And I think in general, that's all done for the behalf of the athlete, so that when they're done, they actually have a degree. But it does become a critical issue when athletes drop below that 2.0 GPA, or they run into a bad class, and all of a sudden now they're risking failure of a course. Depending on where they are in the year and what semester it is, that can deem them ineligible. And now they risk losing their financial aid as far as their scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
But the minimum GPA that you have to maintain is a 1.7. And I guess if you're not able to maintain a 1.7, then maybe you shouldn't be committing the time away from your studies.
And that's 1.7 out of a 4-point scale.
Correct.
Let's talk a little bit about the schedule, the indoor schedule first.
We are really excited this year. We've got a complete Division I schedule. As I mentioned before, a great majority of our meets, I think 8 out of 12 are on Saturday, so it's kind of a nice way to go into the weekend. We aren't taking off midweek or really pulling the kids out of class. So from a point of view of where it conflicts with what they're doing here, it's nice. We've tried to keep the meets relatively close. We go to Purdue 4 times. We're going to be going to IU twice. I think we go, I want to say once indoor, and we might be going to, I think we go to IU twice outdoor. We're going to be going to Butler, which is down at the IUPUI Indoor Running Center 4 times. We've actually got 3 meets with them indoor. So it's going to be really nice because we're going to get around the state. We're going to see some of the best competition, and we don't really have to go that far away from home. Most of our trips are within 2 to 3 hours.
And in that chartered bus, it's
That's right.
going to be nice.
Stepping up.
Let's go back for a moment, if we can, Rick, to the area of recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
Being, as you said, a former high school coach, you're in a unique position. You've seen it on both sides.
Right.
A college coach coming to one of your athletes and trying to
Right.
woo that person into going to that institution. And now you're in the same boat, having to go back to some of your old stomping grounds, so to speak, to do
Right.
the same thing.
Right.
Talk about recruiting and what you and the staff are doing.
Well, I tell you, that's probably the one area that has suffered the most, or maybe I should say that needs the most. We basically came into this situation with nothing. And what I mean by that is, they never had track here. We didn't have a starting block. We didn't even have a baton. Nothing. And for you to take a situation like that in hand, it just seems like there's so many things you have to get in place first, like a place to practice, before you really worry about how well the recruiting's going. So, over the last year and a half, we've put a tremendous amount of focus on just getting the program at a point where it's got an identity. Where we have focused a lot of our efforts on fundraising, where we have purchased all new uniforms, warm-ups, travel bags. We've spent thousands of dollars on equipment. We've obtained jumping pits, bounding boxes. I mean, it seems like we've had Christmas around here a couple times. So we just went out and bought all new video equipment to analyze video. So it's really been kind of we got to get to that step before we can effectively do it. And we're right now approaching the time of the year where we're going to really be fulfilling our first recruiting season. And we're going to have a general mailing going out, but it is unique looking at it from both perspectives, as a high school coach, and now looking at it as a college coach. And the only thing I can say is I think IPFW, in its location and in the type of student that goes here, which is a commuter type student, most of them, we will probably live and die on the ability of the area coaches to support us and send us athletes who are interested in running Division I track.
Time for 2 questions before John tells us we have to say goodbye. Question number 1 is a point of clarification. Where is the team going to practice, both for indoor and outdoor, and will there be any quote-unquote home meets, and if so, where will they be held?
Answer to question number 1, we've really worked out some unique arrangements. Right now we practice at New Haven High School in the evening, 2 days a week, which we have full use of all the necessary equipment. The other 2 days a week we practice at Gates. Now, as the weather turns, we will shift our location to Northside, which is where we will have, again, full use of all the equipment. The only disadvantage there is we have to wait until the high school clears the track, and until it really gets warm, that can get a little cold the evening. But in regards to the hurdles we have in front of us, without a facility right now, I really think it's probably the most ideal situation we could work out. Answer to question number 2, we will not have any indoor meet or any outdoor home meets. And the reason for that is you can't host a collegiate meet unless you can offer participation for all the events. And you can't take a traditional high school track and convert it to serve or host all the events. There's the steeplechase that nobody around here could actually offer. You've got a place to throw the javelin, a place to throw the hammer. Those 3 events right there would really rule out trying to use any other place. And not too many universities will want to come and participate at your location if you are unable to offer all the events, which there's 21 of them in all.
John says we're out of time.
Okay.
Thanks an awful lot for coming in, and I really appreciate the effort. I know it's difficult to get in here, but we do appreciate you coming in. Good luck in the upcoming season, and hopefully we'll get you back as the season goes along.
You just let me know, because I kind of want to get a plug in there about people, anybody who has interest.
Phone number to call.
Right. Okay. You want me to just say it?
Yep. Say it right now.
Let's see. I'm trying to think. 490-6269, and that would be, if he could put on there anybody who has an interest in running track, men or women who have an interest in running track at IPFW.
490-6269.
Correct.
Thanks again.
Great.
Rick Norton has been our guest, the head track and field coach for IPFW. We thank Rick. We also thank Doug Knoll for appearing earlier on the program as well. And as always, we thank you, the viewer, for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW athletics. Quick program note, volleyball begins this Friday and Saturday night at the Gate Sports Center. College 56 will be there. Long Beach State Friday night, Concordia from Bronxville, New York on Saturday night. Join Ryan Perrott and me at 7 o'clock if you can't make it here in person at the Gate Sports Center. And we invite you to come back next week for another edition of Mastodon Spotlight. But until then, this is Mike Maas saying have a great week and go Dons.